First 2-minute opening statement will be Mr. Good.
Thank you all very much for being here today. It's good to see so many people interested in this runoff. My name is Lance Gooden. I live in Terrell. My wife is here, along with my son back there somewhere. And we appreciate, right here. We appreciate you all having us. I'm the proof conservative in this race. I'm in my 3rd term as state representative for Canton and Henderson counties. I'm also the only candidate in this race that's from rural Texas. I live down the road in Terrell. I will be very accessible. I look forward to continuing to represent the people of rural Texas as we win this seat and go on to win the general against the Democrat in November. We appreciate your consideration. Look forward to visiting with you tonight.
Ms. Pounds, you'll have 2 minutes.
Sorry, it was on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to Clay and Doc and all the volunteers that put this on tonight. Thank you for caring enough about your nation to show up tonight and to hear the differences of opinions. It's very important. This race is one of the most important races that we have going on right now. I'm Bunny Pounds. I'm running to be your member of Congress and to represent you well in Washington, D.C. I am the wife of Tim Pounds, my best friend here, who is here. We've been married 22 years. My son Ben is here. He's 19. Wave Ben. He took off work tonight. And our 21-year-old is a Romanian missionary with my new Romanian daughter-in-law, Teo. They're serving over there, and we miss them greatly. I'm a 2-time small business owner with my husband. Went back to school to finish my political science degree at the age of 32, graduated magna cum laude from Dallas Baptist University. And for the last decade, I've had the opportunity of serving along Congressman Jeb Hinterling as his campaign manager throughout the 5th Congressional District. It's been a privilege. 2.5 years ago, launched my own consulting firm to help our conservative, liberty-minded candidates make sure that they got reelected. I am running to make sure that we preserve our Constitution, to make sure that we protect your liberties and my liberties, to make sure that President Trump has the reinforcements to strengthen our military, take care of our veterans, our great heroes among us, and to secure our border and to stop amnesty once and for all. That is the reasons why I'm running in this race, because I believe our district needs to be represented well. I'm 100% pro-life, and I will be your advocate for the unborn. I've been endorsed by almost every major conservative organization, including Texas Right to Life, Texas Values, Concerned Women for America. The list goes on, and our great Vice President Mike Pence, because he believes that we have to protect our liberties. Thank you so much. I'm Bunny Pounds.
Okay, before we go to the questions, those of y'all that are over here on the side, if you're not going to listen to the congressional races, we need you to move further to the back or go outside if you would, because it's disruptive and disrespectful actually to these candidates. So we'd appreciate it if you would do that. Our first question will go to Mr. Gooden. It is for both of you, but Mr. Gooden will answer first. 1 minute to answer the question, and then each of y'all will answer, and then if either wants to rebut the other, you have 30 seconds. Just give me a hand signal if you want to rebut. Please explain which one of the following Texas Republican members of Congress you most align with politically and how you would demonstrate that in office. Pete Sessions, Bill Ratcliffe, Louis Gohmert, Sam Johnson, or Lamar Smith.
I would actually say that when I get to Congress, I'm going to represent the people of this district. I'm not going to pledge allegiance to any member of Congress. I'm not going to pledge allegiance to any politicians. I'm pledging allegiance to the people that I'm going to represent in Congress. So I look forward to representing you all. There are lots of politicians that are endorsing in this race. I'm proud to have the fewest amount of politicians endorsing me in this race, and I'm proud to have the support of people and grassroots organizations like the National Rifle Association on board with my campaign.
Ms. Bounds?
Yeah, thank you. I think when I look at members of Congress, they're all varied in their approach, but we have to make sure that we're communicating the conservative message with vigor, with passion, and that we take it to it, because you need a limited government conservative. Of those members, I would probably say John Ratcliffe. He has served us well. He has been a liberty fighter. He has done so much when it comes to national security and cybersecurity, and I absolutely appreciate his record and would stand with him and fight for our conservative values in East Texas. Thank you.
Okay, this is for both of you. Ms. Pounds, you're first. What would you do to promote the pro-life cause in the U.S. House?
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Like I said, from the very beginning, I was endorsed by Texas Right to Life in this race because of my history in the pro-life movement, starting out as a Bible school student, standing out in front of Planned Parenthood places and making sure that we really try to protect the unborn at every level. We've been very active. Me and my husband pastor a house church in Garland where we live, and we've been very active with our Pregnancy Resource Center as well. I think we have a couple priorities. Number one, we have to defund Planned Parenthood completely. We have to make sure the Hyde Amendment remains permanent, that we never put another dollar of federal funds into abortion ever again. And we have to stand for the unborn at every level. Regardless of what doctors or humans say about disabilities or the unborn in the womb, we have to protect life at every level, and that's my commitment to you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a reminder, no applause or comments during the question and answer period so that we keep the questions moving along smoothly. Thank you. Mr. Good?
Thank you. I'm absolutely the pro-life candidate in this race. I have a 100% pro-life record. Texas Alliance of Life has endorsed me. I was adopted as a child. I have a newborn baby. I'm very, very much on board with the pro-life movement and probably one of the loudest supporters down in Austin. One of the things we did in Austin that I was a part of was defunding Planned Parenthood. One of the things our representatives in Congress, including Congressman Hensling, did was vote to fund Planned Parenthood at the national level a few weeks ago in that omnibus bill, which is very disappointing. So I would say that I'm going to do just the opposite of what our current congressman does with respect to funding budgets that fund Planned Parenthood. I think that's terrible and it's a travesty. And when I get to Washington, I will not vote for a budget that funds Planned Parenthood.
I just want to respond by saying that I am not Congressman Jeff Hensling. And I want to make that very clear in this race. I respect my former boss, but I am not him. And I would have voted against that omnibus as well. And I also put a statement out within an hour of the vote, which you can see on Facebook. And I have yet to see a statement from my opponent. Thank you.
Okay, this question goes to both of you. Mr. Gooden first. Do you support the current Republican tax plan that was recently passed? And what, if anything, would you want to see done differently? Also, how would you end the ongoing use of continuing resolutions? And in what areas would you reduce spending?
Am I first?
You are.
Okay, great. Absolutely, I support the tax cut. And what I would do differently is make it bigger. I'd go for another one. I think there was talk about that earlier in the year. It seems gridlock and the Speaker's retirement has made that not so much a priority as much as it is maintaining control of the House in November. But one of the things I would do is not vote for continuing resolutions that fund things like Planned Parenthood. So that'd be one of the first things I cut. I absolutely made a statement that day. I've made more statements than I can keep up with respect to not funding Planned Parenthood. That's something we as a nation should not be doing, and I'm so disappointed in that continuing resolution. Another thing it did was fund sanctuary cities. Our congressman voted to fund sanctuary cities. When I was in Austin, I voted to ban funding for sanctuary cities and ban sanctuary cities. That's something that we as a nation shouldn't tolerate, and that's something that I wouldn't tolerate as a congressman.
Response?
Yes. Yeah, the Jobs Act was, the tax cut bill was amazing reform. It was one of the biggest regulatory reform of this generation. I'm so proud of President Trump and our Congress to make sure that we are taken care of, that we have the individual mandate for Obamacare was cut. That was a huge victory for the American people. We made sure that small business owners like me and my husband can take deductions quicker. We can save massive amounts of money. Our individual tax burden and our corporate tax burdens were cut. Those were incredibly important for our economy. I would have made sure we got rid of the death tax because that's what hurts East Texas farmers. That's what hurts future generations of job creators out here in Van Zandt County. You can see on your chairs is an economic plan that I put together over the last week, and I would love for you to see that and read it and know that we want to make sure that we're fighting for our economy in every step of the way.
Response? Okay. Next question, Kim.
This is for both of you, and Ms. Powers will be first. Regarding immigration issues, please explain your detailed plans of protecting our borders, including the wall, your position on sanctuary cities, sending National Guard troops to the border, and your position on the administration's recent proposal to transition 1.8 million illegal residents to citizenship.
Thank you. This is one of the most important issues of our day. As you know, illegal immigration is stealing resources from our hospitals, from our schools, from our families. We have to do something different. And that's why President Trump won in a landslide, because this is the most important issue of our time. I absolutely support President Trump's building the wall. We have to allocate funds for that. It's one of the most important things that the Constitution calls for us to do, is to protect the people of the United States, and that starts by building a wall. I am against sanctuary cities. I am against amnesty, period, and that even means DACA. We don't talk about anyone jumping in front of the line, and definitely not skipping over my own daughter-in-law in Romania who's trying to come here legally. That is my position, and that's what I will take when I go to Washington, D.C.
Mr. Gooden?
Looks like we share the same views on immigration. I banned sanctuary cities in Austin. Is the only difference. One of us has a proven record, one of us is saying what you all want to hear. Actually, we're both saying what you want to hear. We're both against illegal immigration. We're both against amnesty. I don't know that we've had major policy differences along the way on the immigration issue. The main difference is, you know what you're getting with me. I'm a proven conservative that has banned sanctuary cities. I voted for the strictest amendments along with that bill, and we've banned sanctuary cities in Texas. That's something we've got to do in Washington. Again, our current congressman, who has endorsed my opponent, voted to fund Planned Parenthood as well. But sanctuary cities, we've got to stop this cycle of going along to get along in Washington, which gives us these budgets with things like sanctuary cities funded.
I'm just wondering who my opponent's running against. So a congressman that you've all loved and respected and has served you well. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Okay, our next question goes to Mr. Gooden. You just stated, and you have stated in campaign material, that you're a conservative Republican. After reviewing several credible conservative scorecards in the most recent Texas House session, your rank among the 94 Republicans is as follows. Rice University, 89th out of 94. Texas Values, 79th out of 94. Texas Eagle Forum, 76th out of 94. Young Conservatives of Texas, 69th. And Empower Texas, 78th. In addition, the Texas Conservative Coalition has 66 House members, and you are not one who has joined them. How do these rankings make you a conservative Republican, and what would be different in the U.S. House?
Sure. If you go down to Terrell and talk to my constituents, talk to the people that have elected me for 3 sessions now to the Texas House, they would tell you in Kaufman and Henderson County that Lance Gooden is someone who gets something done. Lance Gooden is not a scorecard Republican. I'll pick on the Rice University ranking, for example. If you look at the people who are at the top of that list, for the most part, there are folks who have not passed bills. And if you want someone who's going to go to Washington and vote no, or vote to get along with whatever it is we've been doing, that's not me. I'm not your guy. I'm the guy that's going to go to Washington and represent my district. I'm going to say no to the special interests. I'm not going to be bought and paid for. And I'm not going to come back at campaign time talking about all the special interests that want me to come back to Washington. I'm a man of the people that elected me, and I'll go to Washington and represent you all.
Response?
Yeah, is there a question there? Okay. He keeps talking about special interests. Texas Eagle Forum. I would like to know how many of y'all are members of Texas Eagle Forum? How many of y'all are part of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility? How many of you are part of Concerned Women for America? These are groups that we join to add our voices together for the cause of liberty. And these are groups that hold our elected officials accountable. My opponent is the 5th most liberal Republican in the Texas House, period. And his record shows that. When you have a 42% from Texans for Fiscal Responsibility because you continue to pass bills against Governor Abbott's property tax reform bill, And we can go on and on about the record, but the reality is 42% is a failing grade. 70% of his colleagues are in the Texas Conservative Coalition, and he is not invited to join. Why? Because his record does not match their rhetoric. So that's what I want to say, and thank you so much. I am a proven constitutional conservative that's been in the movement over 15 years. Thank you.
Response. Okay, Ken, next question.
Ms. Pounds, this is just for you.
Yes.
You have not been a resident of Congressional District 5 prior to Jeb Hensarling, Congressman Hensarling, announcing his retirement. Why should the voters consider supporting you in light of that?
The reality is I have been a resident of District 5 for over 16 years. Me and my family grew up, we raised our kids in Garland. I started out as a precinct chair for Congressman Hensarling, an election judge. Back in 2004, I put out Jeb Hensarling yard signs all over our district and all over our city of Garland. But 5 years ago, when the lines got redrawn, our house got redrawn out a mile and a half. A mile and a half from the 5th Congressional District. And those of you who have served with me on the state legislature, the state convention, know that I always hang out with the 5th Congressional District. So the day we filed for office was the day I wasn't going to let my opponent use this against me. And we moved and bought a house 3 miles from our paid-for Dave Ramsey house to make sure that you were represented well. And that's all I'm going to say about this, because the reality is this race is about our records. And I offer you and want to serve you as the 5th Congressional District Congressman. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be nice if you had enough money to just buy a house to run for office? I would love that. The fact of the matter is, we redrew the lines in the State House in 2011. I was a member of the legislature at the time. And Bunny hasn't lived in the district since then. Why is that important? That's important because if you're going to go to Washington and represent the good people of Congressional District 5 and say, I'm representing the folks back home, you have to live among them. Our own Congressman Jeb Hensarling doesn't live in his own district. And that's really tough because he's now come into this district and said, you need to support this lady who moved into your district so she can save you from yourselves, because no one in Congressional District 5 is qualified to run according to Jeb Hensarling. So it's really important that we have someone in this race that's from this district that represents the people.
Yes.
Again, my opponent's trying to talk about my geography and my zip code. Our community in Garland believes the same thing that you believe here in Canton, Texas. We're for conservative values. We're for stopping illegal immigration. We're for making sure that our children are protected and our education is the best. So again, we're not talking about the things that are important here. And Congressman Hensarling did live in the district until just a few months ago when he decided not to run for re-election. So that's kind of a stupid sticking point too.
Okay, the next question is for both of you, starting with Mr. Gooden. Do you support the provision in the Farm Bill that provides cost share to producers for things like conservation projects and crop insurance? Please explain your stance.
Yes, I'm on board with our farmers across this rural area. This is a rural district, and one of the groups that's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in this race against me supporting my opponent is the Club for Growth. They oppose our farmers and rangers across Henderson and Van Zandt and Faulkner counties, and they'll have great influence with my opponent if she were to win this election, because they have spent $1 million in this race. Our farmers and rangers need support, and I'll provide that when I get to Washington.
I believe that we have to look at federal spending in a couple ways. The Constitution calls for us to spend certain money for certain things, and certain things we're not supposed to be spending money on. Of course we support our farmers. Of course we want small business to prosper. But how do we do that? Is that through federal government subsidies that picks winners or losers? Or is that by growing our economy and setting us all free to be who we are in the greatest nation on earth? That's where I stand. I probably would have a hard time voting for a bloated farm bill. But in reality, we can protect our farmers and our land by giving us the freedom for prosperity, and that's what I stand for.
Okay, next question. This is to both of you, starting with Ms. Pounds. Have you read the entire Texas Republican Party platform? Do you agree with all the tenets of the platform? If not, which ones do you not agree with and why?
Yes, I started out as a grassroots activist in 2004. I got very passionate about our Constitution and American government, and I became a delegate to the state convention back then, a long time ago, and fought for our platform and in resolution committees. So I'm very, very versed in our grassroots. I absolutely support our Republican platform. I read it every 2 years at the convention when it comes out of the final vote. I would support it absolutely. My opponent is on record saying that he has not voted to uphold the Republican platform, and that's a problem when we're electing our member of Congress, because this platform is the will of the people and is our conservative values dictated out in a piece of paper that we should hold as very precious because it comes from the precincts all the way to the state convention.
I absolutely support the Republican Party platform. However, I do not support planks such as private school vouchers. That's something that this area is against. The Club for Growth, I mentioned them because they're spending so much money in this race. They are for private school vouchers. They would just love for all of our public schools to shut down. So some in the Republican Party that write this platform, they always put that part about school vouchers in there. I think it's bad for our schools across Van Zandt County. I think it's bad for all the public schools across all of Congressional District 5. So I would tell you that when I get to Washington, my loyalty is to the people that I represent back home. There are folks who are going to go to Washington if they get elected. They go to Austin and they call up the Rice University professor and say, hey, how do I need to vote on this to get a certain score? That's not what I do. That's not how I operate. I call the folks back home and say, what is it that's best for this district? That's what I'll do in Washington.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, 30 seconds.
My opponent keeps talking about Club for Growth. What Club for Growth is an advocacy group in Washington, D.C. that scores members of Congress based on their fight for limited government. How many of us believe that the national debt is inflated at $21 trillion and the deficit spending has to stop? We have to have members elected that fight for limited government, and that's what Club for Growth does, is they want to communicate to the people of 5th Congressional District that my opponent has a dismal conservative record. That's the reality here. It has nothing to do with school choice. Thank you.
Go ahead, 30 seconds.
Before she made her last statement, I said there are some politicians who would go to Washington or Austin and ask how the scorecards are going to rank. Then she responded, this is what Club for Growth does. She's on board with the special interests that are backing her campaign. She's raised millions from special interests from her clients, and she's going to go to Washington and do whatever they say. The Club for Growth, I'm picking on them because they're spending so much money in this race and spreading lies about my record and also failing to talk about what it is that they want to do. They want to close down our Texas public schools. They want private school vouchers, and that's terrible for this county.
Can I respond one more time?
One more time.
Number one, this is an independent expenditure that has nothing to do with our campaign. It is not coordinated with our campaign, to make that very clear. I am very, very proud of what I've done, raising money for our conservative candidates and being a consultant that helps them win, like Senator Bob Hall and Matt Schaefer and Tyler and Connie Burton in Fort Worth. Our liberty-minded conservative candidates are important to uphold, and it's my opponent actually hired a fundraiser to help him do exactly what I've been doing for a living for the last 3 years. So that is the reality. Thank you.
Next question from Ken.
Mr. Good, this one's for you. Did you support the bill to protect women and girls from the potential of predators through gender self-identification in Austin? If not, why not?
I was actually a supporter of legislation that failed in the Senate that would have allowed our public schools to ensure that boys were using the boys' room and girls were using the girls' room. Now, ironically, that wasn't really a big issue in this campaign, but I'm glad we're talking about it because it's important, I think, that our school districts are allowed to police that and make sure that we have proper protocols in place. So, yes, I did support legislation to ensure that our women and girls were protected. Unfortunately, it died in the Senate, so that was a disappointment, but thank you.
It's a rebuttal because there's a question to him, so you have 30 seconds.
Okay. Actually, there was 3 privacy bills that came before the Texas House. 85% of my opponent's colleagues signed on to one of those bills. He never co-sponsored one of those bills. So I would ask you to look at the record and see, did he really believe in this issue or not?
Next question is to both of you, and Ms. Pounds, you'll be first. Given the current political climate around the country with ever-increasing attacks from the left and the media over the Second Amendment and the differing opinions as to who the First Amendment applies, how or what will you do specifically in Congress to ensure that these rights are not infringed upon?
Thank you. I have an AQ rating with the NRA. My opponent was endorsed by the NRA because he has a legislative record, but I have the top rating that you can get as a non-legislator, which I'm very proud of. At the end of the day, the left wants to talk about guns killing people, but it's actually people killing people. People that have been hurt in their mind, that have had issues, and at the end of the day, we have evil that hurts people. The reality is, I will do everything to make sure we can carry guns across state lines, that if an 18-year-old is never infringed on their right to the Second Amendment, if they can be drafted into the military, they absolutely should be able to have a firearm if they get married and have a home that they need to protect. There is nothing that the NRA has put out that I would disagree with. Thank you.
Mr. Good.
I'd first like to say the NRA has endorsed me, and I'm happy that Bunny Pounds agrees with that. Second, I would say, isn't it wild that in one breath she calls me liberal, and in the next breath she tells you about my NRA endorsement? How could that be? How could that be? I'm endorsed by the NRA because I'm the only one in this race that has a proven record of standing up for our conservative gun rights, values, and what we believe in. The NRA is all in for me because they know that I'm the only one in this race that has the capability, determination, and ability to go to Washington, defend Van Zandt County and all the counties in Congressional District 5, and ensure that our gun rights are protected. So you will have no greater ally in the battle to protect our Second Amendment than myself when I get to Washington.
Yeah.
This is for both of you. Mr. Good, you're first. What have you personally done to be actively involved with the Republican Party activities in Texas and to convey the principles of the Republican Party to the public? For example, have you served as a delegate or an alternate to the state convention? If so, how many times? If not, why not?
I'm in my third term as state representative, a Republican. Just this past year, we banned sanctuary cities in the state of Texas. Are you all in agreement that that's a great thing? Absolutely, I thought so. We passed a strong voter ID bill. We stood up for the Second Amendment. I'm endorsed by the NRA. My Republican credentials are, bar none, far and above better than my opponents. I'm the proven conservative in this race, and I'm proud of the work I've done, not just for the Republican Party, but for people all across Texas and those that I represent.
Ms. Pounds?
Yes, sir. Like I stated before, I've been a delegate to the state convention since 2004. I've been very active on platform resolution fights. I understand the voice of the grassroots. That is where I started. As a homeschooling mom, I got very passionate about our Constitution, and that's what compelled me to go back to Dallas Baptist University at the age of 29, get my degree there, and graduate magna cum laude at the age of 32. And I became not a typical intern at Congressman Hinsley's office. Why? Because I believe your voice matters. And I've served very faithfully the last decade throughout this congressional district, in my community, in your community. The reason why I got into this race was because I want to be your voice. I want to make sure you're taken care of. I want to make sure you're represented well, and that someone goes and fights for you. And I know your stories. I've read your emails. I've hung out with you, so many of you, for so many years. And I know what you want in a representative, and that's why I'm running, to make sure that you're represented well. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is for both of you. Ms. Pounds, you'll be first. Who are the three people in history that you admire most and why? And also, who in American politics today do you most admire and why?
My three greatest, I would have to say Jesus, because he taught us how to live, and he commissions us to be Christ-like. And after 20 years in lay ministry with my husband, leading worship, writing Bible studies, pastoring folks, I always esteem to be like Jesus. Second, I love Corrie ten Boom. I love reading about the stories of patriots that stood in the firing line for our great brothers and sisters, like our Jewish brethren, against a massive Holocaust. I also love Dietrich Bonhoeffer, if anybody's read about him, you know, a spy against Hitler and tried to assassinate him as a minister of the gospel and as a prophet. I believe the body of Christ needs to rise up and be light and salt in our culture, and that's what I've attempted to do with my life. Oh, and current. You know, as a woman, I like Marsha Blackburn. She's got a great conservative record. She's running for the Senate right now, and she has been solid on limited government and been a fighter for the unborn, and I love her. And Nikki Haley.
Mr. Gooden?
Thank you. There's lots of folks in history and historical figures that I could talk all night about, but I'd say the three most important people to me when I say history, I think deceased, they're my three-grandparents. I have one living, but they've made the greatest impact on my life, and they've helped make me who I am today. And the politician that I most respect is Donald Trump. You know, he ran when many people didn't think they had a chance. In fact, ironically, the Club for Growth, which is supporting my opponent, spending all this money in this county, spent $11 million opposing Donald Trump. He won anyway. And he has done his best to drain the swamp. Unfortunately, Congress has continued to not necessarily work with him the way I believe they should. But I think Donald Trump's done a fantastic job and risen against all odds, not just in Washington, but along the campaign trail.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, 30 seconds.
Just to clear the record, Club for Growth worked to support Senator Ted Cruz, like many of us in this room. That's the reality. So it wasn't that they were fighting against President Trump. They were just fighting for what the conservative that they believed in at the time.
Okay, the final question before closing statements goes to both of y'all. Mr. Gooden, you'll be first. For the reporting period ending March the 31st, Mrs. Pound shows having raised 63% more in individual contributions from 148% more individual contributors than you. Would each of you please comment on these results and your interpretation of them?
Sure. We knew from day one when a political fundraiser who has the backing of the outgoing congressman jumped in the race that we wouldn't be able to raise as much money as Glenn Pound. So she's a professional fundraiser. She raises money from the special interest for a living. So she should have more money raised, right? So, you know, we've been able to compete with that. In the first round, I was analyzing those numbers. Over Sam Dean, for example, over 70% or maybe 80% of his donations came from within Congressional District 5. I believe the number that Sam's team told me was over 75% of mine came from within this district. So I think it's really important to talk about where the money comes from when you're looking at who's funding campaigns. But we also ran a lean operation. We spent about $6 per vote. Ms. Pound spent about $21 per vote in the first round. So I think that really goes to show how people are relating to our campaign. They want someone that actually lives in this district, that's from this area, and they're not fooled by the special interest that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this race, and that will continue to do so as the time goes on.
Good.
I love talking about finance reports. You know why? Because the Bible says that when you give part of your treasure, you give part of your heart. And it's been a privilege to ask you to invest $10 or $15 or $20 into this campaign. We had, at the time of our last filing, we had over 650 individual donors. We have donors from all 7 counties. We have been actively pursuing you as donors. Why? Because you'll show up and you'll bring your friends if you invest $100 into this campaign. So I'm not ashamed of that. The reality is, my opponent, he keeps talking about special interests. In his state, as a state representative and candidate, he raised over $1.7 million, and $1.1 million of that, 70%, came from PACs, registered lobbyists, special interests, out of district, and even out of state donors. So really, this is not an issue. This is really a campaign of the voice of the people, and I thank you all for supporting me. It's been a huge blessing and a humbling experience.
Closing statements, 1 minute each. Ms. Pounds will be first.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to thank my husband for coming on the campaign trail with me. He's been trying to keep our life together, running our small businesses. And my son, Ben, thank you, Ben, Julia, his girlfriend, for coming tonight. Really, this is an incredibly important election. We say that all the time. This is one of the most important elections of your lifetime. This next 29 days will define this congressional district. I'm not a professional politician. I never thought about running for office, but my passion is to make sure that you're represented well, and that is why the Vice President of the United States has endorsed my campaign. I'm very thankful for having known Mike Pence for about 10 years and walked with him and talked with him. Very thankful that he asked me to have a private meeting with him when he was in Dallas. That is why many of you, over several hundred on our website that you can come look to, including our Commissioner, Tim West. We also had a new endorsement today, Clint Davis, our county attorney in Henderson County. And I'm so thankful for all of the elected officials, former elected and party leadership that have endorsed us. Thank you.
Mr. Good, 1 minute.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate Ms. Pounds for joining us tonight. And I just want to ask for your consideration as we move forward in the next 29 or however many days. 29 days to go. It's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed getting to know Ms. Pounds and the other candidates along the way. I'm the proven conservative in this race. Van Zandt County has an opportunity to have a rural Texan as their congressman. They haven't had that in 20 or 30 years, I believe, and I look forward to being your voice in Washington. Thank you.